You are listening to Faith in the Firehouse. This is a podcast by firefighters talking about Jesus, the fire service, and life around the firehouse. We are not pastors, preachers, or Bible scholars. We're just firefighters after God's own heart, and we want to talk about it. This is episode number 28, and Greg Love is back to walk me through my testimony.
Good and gracious God, I come to you today with a grateful heart. I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here again today with Danny and get the opportunity not only for fellowship, but also to come together to hopefully share some pertinent information with other believers and maybe to bring one more with us. Lord, I just thankful for our friendship and for all the different ways that you're using us. I pray that we continue to be guided by you, Holy Spirit, throughout this process. And that we would continue to go out into this crazy world and shine for you. All these things I ask in your holy and precious name. Amen.
Amen. Yeah, thank you.
Amen.
And thank you for just all the support, man, and all the encouragement, all the discipleship that you've been pouring into me for the last, it's going on like 2 years since this whole endeavor, this journey started for me, where things really changed. And today I'm going to share my testimony. It's something that I've wanted to do from the very beginning of Faith in the Firehouse. I really wanted it. I wanted to at least put it out there in the very first episode, if not for anything but transparency. Because, I haven't shied away from sharing parts of my story, but I do want the listeners to know who I am, and where I come from, my perspective, and why it is the way it is. And as this thing has started to get some viewership, I've been asked to be on other podcasts, and we were just on Paul Conway's Beyond the Shield. So look out for that. So that's exciting. It's humbling. And I talked to Paul personally, and I shared this with him. But I want him to know, hey man, this is who I am. This is who you're asking to be on your podcast, because I haven't always been walking with Christ, and it was really ugly for a little while. I made some mistakes, and man, I just thank God every day for all that. Before we even got on air, we were talking about it's just if things had happened different. I know God had a better plan laid out for me, but I can't see myself being the way that I am, having not been through everything I've been through. And I learned so many lessons throughout it that I want to be able to share them. So hopefully we can maybe expand on some of the stuff in here and pull out some of the lessons as we go along. So that's why I asked Greg to be here, just to keep me on track. And the other reason is, I don't want to be tempted to start talking about my past and either soften anything up, because that would take away from the glory of God and what he's done in my life. But at the same time, I don't want to go too far the other direction and take away from the sovereignty of God, in that trying to find that balance. I recognize that in this life we got to take complete ownership of what we do and leave the rest up to God. So when I listen to people's testimonies, I like hearing the whole story from the beginning to the end, because I like knowing, did you always walk with the Lord? Did you grow up in a church? Did you go to church every day? Did you have parents that raised you as believers? Or did you not know who Jesus was at all? Were you a Christian like me, where you just went sometimes here and there? Or, were you Buddhist and
right? Yeah. Had a conversion. Yeah.
Like my wife, she was raised a Buddhist.
Yeah.
I'd love to maybe have her on sometime. But I like hearing the whole story from the beginning and how God works in people's lives. So I figured that's where I'll start, taking it all the way back. It was the summer of 1985, and it was some romance in the air. Things were getting a little steep.
Maybe not that far.
Okay, we can skip some of the details. So I grew up, like I said, kind of going to church on Christmas and Easter, more often than that. But, for the most part, I was raised by a single mother. It's me and my brother. And we were definitely Christian in name. We knew who Christ was. I knew that he died for me. I knew that he died for my sins. I knew who the major people were in the Bible. Went to Sunday school here and there. But it wasn't like a big presence in our house. We probably had a Bible somewhere. It was probably collecting dust. We didn't open it a whole lot, at least not until my mother got saved in my early teen years. And that had a big influence on us as a family, because she's, we were, like I said, teens at that point, and started going to youth group with some friends, and started really getting into it and getting to know Christ a little more. So looking back now, as I had this rebirth, in my late 30s, seeing what my mom went through in her 30s, it was kind of surreal, because she's experienced a lot of the things that I experienced. And I remember her trying to explain them to me, trying to explain how Jesus was speaking to her, trying to explain to me how to read scripture and stuff. And I remember the glow in her,
Yeah.
So it really did help guide me through a lot of this stuff. And, she's been a strong believer ever since. And
It's funny, like that little seed,
yeah,
little seed was there, and you buried it, or life buried it,
yeah,
but eventually it popped through the rocky soil,
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things that I recognize now that I'm in touch with the Holy Spirit is, like, people ask, like, how do you know if that's how do you know if that's like God's work or whatever, or if that's like the Spirit, or if it's just like, how do you discern these things? And it's that in the right moment, those things just come back to you.
Yeah.
They come right back to you. And I know that, like, that's why I got that piece of information 25 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's kind of wild how that will happen.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. Good on your mom for, a lot of times it seems like, we've hammered the church quite a bit on this podcast, and I don't mean in a bad way. I just mean we've talked quite a bit about it, and oftentimes we mention, as the man goes, the family goes, the church goes, the country goes.
Yeah.
But in your case, your mom was playing double roles.
Yeah.
Mine did too for a period of my life. And so good on her for, not giving up, being willing to do that. And I've been a part of a Bible study with your mom. She's on fire, so
She continues to be.
That's right. Yeah. Here we are all these years later. So it's good to have that rock,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of those things that I didn't realize until I became an adult, is how important these roles are in the family. My parents divorced when I was like 3 years old. So it was all I knew.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was, all right, that's just how our family is.
Right.
I didn't know what a real family was supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
My dad wasn't like totally out of the picture or anything, but we didn't live with him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I recognize how important it is to have that male role model, man. And I hope the rest of America realizes that too, to be honest. And, another blessing has been the fire service.
Yeah.
Because, for real, the fire department raised me in a lot of ways. So,
Good and bad.
yes, good and bad. We'll get into some of that. But yeah, so we started going to youth group, that kind of stuff, and started seeking the Lord, kind of started falling away once I graduated high school, got caught up with going to college and getting, into trying to get in my career and all that, and decided I wanted to be a fireman, start going that route. I had a girl that brought me back to Christ. She was a strong believer, so right before I got hired with Orlando, and I'm living in South Florida, I'm dating her. Things are starting to get serious. I make that prayer of salvation. I give my life to Christ. I believed it when I prayed it. I meant it. It's not a coincidence to me that, like, again, looking back, like right after that, I get that call. Like, things are starting to get serious with me and my girlfriend, and I get that call. You know how long I was on the waiting list for Orlando for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
It was the last thing, farthest thing from my mind, man.
Good test taker, huh?
They really scraped the bottom of the barrel for my class. Yeah, and they got the SAFER grant, and it was like, we got to hire people, we got to put people on shift right now. Do you still want the job? Start next week.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
well, heck yeah. I actually had applied to that job before I met her, so I was like, Orlando's where you want to go.
Yeah.
We were talking about it earlier. It's a great department. A lot of tradition, really cool. I mean, working for a smaller department that was young, it was like, I'm going to go work in the city. You got high angle, you got dive, you got hazmat, like all that cool stuff when you're,
right.
Fresh out of fire academy and want to get after it. So, of course, I was going to go. And so I take the job, but it's like from where I lived, it's a little too far to commute. It's like 3.5, 4 hours. So I got to move, and we're not ready. Like I said, things were getting serious, and I think, I'm 24 years old. Just started a new job in a new city. Marriage wasn't on my mind. Should have been probably.
Yeah.
But no, marriage wasn't on my mind. I was all about the fire department. That's all I cared about. In my mind, it was going to work out. It's a little distance, no big deal. But my focus became so much on the fire department. And moving to a new city where I didn't know anyone, I'm leaving my whole family behind. I'm leaving my girlfriend, my friends. I left my church. And like I said, I just made that prayer, not long before that. And I'm like, oh, I'll get a church. And even my girlfriend was like, you find a church yet? She would ask me. So yeah, just kind of out of laziness, really. I just never found a church. It just wasn't my priority, and there wasn't a strong presence of believers around me there. And we all know that can probably vary from shift to shift. But I'll be honest, man, until recently, like there's a handful of people that I knew were believers, and I think part of that's probably because my eyes weren't open to it.
Sure.
But there definitely was nobody talking about Jesus at my shift.
Yeah, we kind of hit on that with the Beyond the Shield, right? And like guys don't want to force it on other guys or be the one guy who's different and all that stuff, all those reasons that, and you said, you're not 2/3 a Christian, it's so true. Right. Yeah. So,
yeah. And I don't mean to sound like, we've had this conversation before. Is there enough evidence around the firehouse to convict me? And I'm not trying to again, pass blame. Like there wasn't enough Christian support around me.
Yeah, no, I don't hear that. But the truth is the truth, So,
so I think there's that combination of, I wasn't looking for it. I still don't know. Like I think of that crew that I worked with. I don't know if they're believers or not.
Yeah.
But anyway, it wasn't in my mind, man. And it didn't take long, and it's funny because I remember when I first moved into that apartment, and I remember standing there in the kitchen, having just given my life to Christ. I remember thanking God for that job, thanking God for this job. I remember raising my hands up and I said, thank you, Lord. Thank you for this blessing. I want to serve you. I want to be on the front lines. I want to be a warrior for you. And I have to laugh at that now because I just had no idea what I was praying. I had no idea what that really meant. I had no idea what real temptation looked like. And I really had no idea how weak I could be. So it didn't take long, man. You add in the distance, the allure of the new job, being focused on that. Now I'm trying to make friends and I'm trying to get in with the cool kids.
Yeah.
And like we talked about too, man, and again, not to sound condemning or judgmental, because again, I was Whiskey Dan, that's who I turned into. But there's a strong culture. I'd say there's a culture revolves around alcohol in the fire service.
For sure.
It's every event.
It's a way to unwind. It's not necessarily the right way, but it's a way. It's a way. There's a very old saying that I heard when I was all the way back at Apopka that they can't do anything to me in 24. I can't drink off in 48. Oh,
so that's funny. I actually had never heard that.
That's part of it, right? I think now we're talking about events, hosting events and having events where guys aren't drinking. I mean, and again, some guys should have a drink to lighten up, right? Other guys should never touch it again, right? And so there you go, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and so I think that's the importance of what Paul says is when he says is all things are not unlawful for me, but all things aren't profitable either.
Yeah. And so what I realized, like you said, I still wonder if I've never had a healthy relationship with alcohol, like maybe I just was like one of those people who can't handle it, or whether I pushed past that point and can't go back. But I do think there's a certain amount of us of people in the general population don't do well with alcohol, don't do well with certain things.
Sure.
And I just think that's one thing I would like to put out there is, guys, and this, I would like guys to understand that it's not an issue of willpower for some people.
Yeah.
And that's why I beat myself up for so long, because I thought that I was weak and I just had to be stronger and I just got to learn how to control it. So, we're all young at some point, and I know not all of us get into the heavy drinking scene, but twisting guys' arms, man, or like, that peer pressure kind of thing, it don't make you a man, dude, to drink, and it's something stupid I bought into.
Yeah. It's looked at in some circles as, well, you just can't hold your alcohol. You can't, he's a lightweight, or he's of course that's got a negative connotation in life, in general, not just the fire service, right? But in life, you want to be looked at as the guy who can drink all day or whatever,
Yeah, and that completely dismisses the spiritual aspect of it, which I want to get into. We'll see how much time we have today, but I definitely will cover it on this podcast, man.
Yeah.
Because I know, and just in short, the devil knows how he can get to certain people.
Yeah, we're just brushing on alcohol.
Yeah.
It could be pornography, it could be hard drugs, it could be whatever, and there is some truth to the gateway idea, right? Of, if I can do this, then I can do this,
Yeah.
So
exactly. And if you're doing anything that's getting you out of your, for me, I try not to do anything other than some caffeine that's going to affect, my mindset. Obviously I don't drink no more, but I don't want anything to get me, like, to take me out of being behind the wheel. So yeah, I went all into that lifestyle of being a fireman. And that meant being the best at that too. Like, I'm all gas, no brakes. So yeah, I spent the first several years of my career taking classes, working as much as I could, time trades, and then trying to make it to every single event, doing everything. And, so like I said, a lot of that eventually drove a wedge between me and my relationship. And before you know it, I was breaking up with her. It's like, again, like I look back and laugh and go, man, I made that prayer, and it probably wasn't a few months later before I broke up with her, and I'm going downtown all the time with the boys. Like,
yeah, it's the prayer in itself is good, right? To have that prayer of salvation, of doing that. Oftentimes, if it stops there, that's just the beginning, right? And so sometimes we get lulled into the idea of, well, I said the prayer. There's some study out there, and I'm sure I'm misquoting it, but it's Billy Graham's, over his entire ministry, the number of thousands of people who came down to the altar and did the altar call, they followed and tracked some of those people for decades later, and only a small percentage of them have actually still been following Christ. I could try to butcher the numbers, but somebody would catch that it was inaccurate. But it's true. This is a lifestyle of obedience. It's a lifestyle of allowing Him to be your Lord and not just your Savior.
That's
right?
huge.
So
yeah, and I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I think most of us don't when we're young.
Yeah, and that's also why we like to talk about the importance of not just going to church on Sundays.
Correct. Yeah,
because that was all I was getting. Sunday every once in a while here and there, trying to understand some of the most complex, literally you're trying to understand the perfect human philosophy in a weekend, a couple times a month.
Yeah.
So it just pays dividends. But so one of the pivotal moments in my testimony, or I would say important points, maybe not pivotal, things didn't change, but they should have. I woke up one morning. I remember pretty clearly. It was a Saturday morning. I woke up and I went and took a look in the mirror. And I looked in the mirror and I saw a different person in the mirror. I saw a man who was tired, lonely, worn out, and sad. And I remember looking in the mirror and kind of having a little panic attack. And I would have all these thoughts rushing in my head. We're like, what did you do? What did you do? You threw your life away. You wasted it. Like all that stuff. And I remember like taking a deep breath and like literally shaking it off.
This was like at 24,
I was
right?
24 years old. Like just a few months on the job at Orlando, just broke up with my girlfriend, starting to do all that stuff.
Right.
It's weird. Like you can't connect the dots in the moment because you're in the idiot circle.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And I'm looking at it. So I have this vision. And when I say I saw a different person, I literally saw, it was like there was a filter on my mirror. Those didn't exist back then. But man, it freaked me out. And I chalked it up as a panic attack or something. You know, I was like, I'm just hungover. And I went on living my life like nothing had happened. And I never told anybody about that until recent events.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. You know, I realize now that was a warning. God was showing me like, hey, if you keep going down the path, this is who you're going to be.
Yeah.
You know, you could call it a prophecy, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Foreshadowing for sure, right?
Yeah, foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So I keep going on like with that work hard, play hard mentality, you know, for all intents and purposes. I think my first several years in the fire department were very successful. You know, I'm going down to the downtown station. I'm getting my classes. I'm getting on special teams. You know, so for all intents and purposes, man, like life is good. I'm accomplishing my goals, traveling with the boys, going on snowboarding trips all the time. I'm going down to Savannah for the parade every year, like all that stuff, you know.
All of that goes with it, right? That's part of the culture, and that's back to that, the culture of drinking and stuff like that too. You know, I think that's all part of the story. You know, in your case, it didn't work out. In some guys' case, it's just part of life,
right.
You know, but that the trips, the snowboarding, the classes, you know, a lot of times we have to travel to take these classes, or you go for a week at a time. So you stay over and then guys go out in the evening, whatever they're doing. All of that is part of it. I remember when I knew a guy from Orlando, and of course everybody goes to the Orlando Fire Conference when you're trying to get hired, right? And they used to do this. I was already married. You know, I was pretty much married when I got in the fire service within a year. My wife and I have been together since I was a kid. But I remember some of the guys that I had already known that were at Orlando in particular, which again, around here, that's the place to be, right? At least it was then. Everything's changing these days, but you almost couldn't get hired there without a bunch of experience somewhere else and knowing people and all of those things. And so I remember I went to, we used to call it Fire Up the Night or something.
Yeah.
You know, and my wife and I went together, and that was the first time I'd ever done anything like that. And I remember running into my buddy, and he's like, look, if you're going to come to Orlando, this is the expectation. You're going to come out, you're going to go do these things, or else you're going to be kind of cast aside. You know what I mean? So it's definitely, I'm sure it's every department, but it's definitely part of our department's culture.
Yeah, I mean, I talk to guys from all around, and it's definitely not unique, but I think, you know, we also have, we're not a huge department, but we are a larger one, 17 stations, and, you know, maybe some of these smaller departments don't have the same kind of, you know, I don't know, social.
Some of it is the proximity to the nightlife and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, and where we work.
Yeah. I worked downtown and lived downtown for about 7 years.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, yeah, after 7 years of that lifestyle started to feel pretty empty, you know, and that's where, like I said, like on paper, everything's checking the box. I'm doing good. And, but I did start to realize, like, man, a bar in Nashville is the same as a bar in Tahoe. It's the same as a bar in Savannah. It's the same as a bar in New Orleans. I mean, yeah, it was sure, were we still having fun? But it did feel empty. And, kind of in the height of those wayward years, I say there was another like pivotal moment where I started to really separate from Christ. And this is, after years of being on the job, getting beat up down at Station 1, we're running on the nightlife. I mean, downtown is like, from a first responder standpoint, it's not pretty. There's drugs, alcohol, and then there's homeless population. There's violence, all that stuff. We see all the dark side of that. And I think the combination of the lifestyle I was living and then seeing those things and not being able to reconcile, I just was like, by that point I was like admitting, or claiming to be agnostic. I would never have claimed atheism just because I think that's just really arrogant for anyone to think that you don't know what's out there. Like even as a agnostic, not believing in God, I was like, there's more than I know. There's more than we humans can know. But anyway, I definitely got to a point where I was like, if I couldn't see it, smell it, taste it, touch, feel it, it wasn't real.
Right.
And then God, showed up again, and this time in the form of a dream. I was sleeping one night. I got woke up from a dead sleep about 2:00 in the morning. I remember having a wild dream, and I don't remember what that dream was, but it ended with Jesus Christ on the cross. It was like, boom.
Yeah.
There he was looking at me.
Yeah.
And, man, that picture is still really clear in my mind. And, the wild thing about that is I told Jeff about that, Huggins, because Huggins liked to, he had an obsession with like this, like spiritual ghosts and stuff, all the old houses downtown. He'd be like, oh, that place is definitely haunted. And he would joke that the place I lived in was haunted. So I told him about it. I was like, oh yeah, I'm having crazy dreams or whatever. And I think he's probably the only person I told that, but he texted me. I was texting with him. He texted me a picture of Jesus Christ on the cross, the exact image I saw in my dream. It wasn't like some other random picture.
Right.
It was exactly what I saw.
Yeah.
And, but being woke up that night by that image, man, like it shook me to my core, man. And I began to realize I wasn't alone. I began to realize, and I had that feeling like I was being watched. But like I said, by this point, I'm a stubborn man.
Do you think you were willfully ignoring?
At that point, after that I was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So up until that point, I didn't believe.
Right.
I did not. But after that happened, I knew I wasn't alone. I knew the spiritual was real. Something was weird.
Yeah.
And things continue to happen in that house.
Yeah.
I could do a whole nother podcast on that with all the roommates I had there that had weird spiritual experiences.
Yeah. Sounds like Chad Wright's bunk room thing he was talking about the other day.
Yes, that it sounded exactly like that.
Yeah.
Dude, that hit me when I was listening to that.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the idea to pray around the place or whatever, but man, it was weird. But yeah, at that point, so that's right around that time, like I'm now I believe, but I'm keeping it to myself. And I remember us talking about it one time around the kitchen table at Station 1, and it was Huggy and I, and we're all talking about, there's all haunted houses down there. And there was one of the guys there who was like a salty old fireman, heavy rescue guy. And I'm like, he's gonna think we're crazy or whatever. He's like, oh yeah, I've had some weird experiences too. And I remember like hearing that from him, it's like, all right, maybe it's not that crazy,
Yeah.
This is a total sidebar, but do you think this constant feeling that you have to like be accepted by maybe the older guys or the more salty guys has to do with your not having your dad around?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy how that father wound
Yeah.
plays such a part even when we don't recognize it, right?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I wasn't going to get too much into the some stuff that cause, you know, I don't want to get any like personal department stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
no,
'cause I know
yeah,
it's
for
not-
sure.
But yeah, like there's been a couple people throughout my career maybe we haven't got along well with, and they're always people that I seem to have a lot in common with. They're older, and they have like a you know, rank on me, like an authority type.
figure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, that's a good.
Well, it's you know, you can tell you're at that point in your life, you're seeking that, right? Something. You were seeking something. Nothing was ever enough. Nothing, you know, if a little's good, a lot's got to be better.
Exactly.
You know, like you said, all gas and no brake. And the approval of the other kids, if you will, you know, it drives all of us. And that's, you know, we hear about that gang mentality or the group mentality, you know, and how that, I mean, look no further than the golf tournament.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, I honestly, like, again, I don't think I would have admitted this, kind of keeping it to myself, but I felt committed to this lifestyle. You know, I felt like this is what I chose. You know, I identified with it. I started to identify as Whiskey Dan. And I'm like, dude, life is still good. Like, I started to tell myself, like, that bachelor lifestyle, like, I don't want kids, you know, all that. Like, I'm accomplishing my goals. You know, I got a new car. I got, as far as career goals, I was hitting everything. So at that point, it's like, all right, if somebody doesn't like my lifestyle, that's just their opinion, you know, and, you know. So you couldn't convince me that it was a bad one. It's just, you didn't agree with it. But really, eventually Grace ran out and things started to slip. You know, because life will do what it does. It hits you sometimes. And, you know, this part of my life, I really relate to the story of Samson. And if you don't know who Samson was, he was one of the judges, and he was under the Nazirite vow. And those vows were basically, he wasn't supposed to drink, he couldn't touch anything unclean, and he couldn't cut his hair. And because of those vows, he had supernatural strength. I mean, the guy was...
Yeah, I mean, that's what he's known for, right?
Yeah. One of the things that I identified with is Samson, he lived very carelessly. He lived a reckless life, constantly hanging out with the enemy and their women specifically. And he liked to drink, so there goes vow number one. Like I said, putting himself in enemy territory all the time, and that's, you know, full of pride, because he's like, I'm the strongest guy around. He's just, you know, gathering up 300 foxes and tying them together and throwing them throughout a town, or he'll slay like 30 Philistines in one incident just because he's angry. And, you know, another time, you know, you try telling Samson...
10 feet tall and bulletproof, right?
Yeah. You try telling Samson after he slays 1,000 Philistines with a donkey's jawbone that, hey, bro, drinking's not good for you. Like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Seems to be working.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I identified with that, man. And where it really hit me is, like I said, when Grace started running out and some other things started happening, when you think about how Samson lost his power, who was really responsible for him losing his power?
So how did he lose his power?
How did he lose his power? Well, he found himself flirting with a Philistine woman, and she would flirt with him. She would seduce him. And then she was paid by the Philistines to try and figure out what his secret was. And he would mess with her, and he'd be like, oh, it was this. I forget the exact things, but he would tell her something fake, and, you know, she'd tie him up with what were the bamboo cords or something. I'll have to look it up. But he would tell her something, and she would try it, and then he would break out of it, laugh at her or whatever. But he kept hanging out with her. I don't know why, but eventually he gave in to her seduction, and he told her why. And it was his hair. That was the last of the Nazirite vows. And she got him, you know, seduced him, got him drunk again, and she cut his hair. So now I don't have like a Delilah who actually cut my hair in my story, but you know, I put myself in a position to where I had burned up, you know, the first 2 strikes. So when life hits, when I have an injury, you know, or maybe an honest mistake here and there, and that turns into a slippery slope.
Yeah.
When things start falling through the cracks, man. So that's kind of where I was at, man. I put myself in a tough position and things started to get hard. And like I said, I started to realize like I wasn't alone. The lifestyle I'm living is not any good, but I didn't know how to get out of it. I felt committed to it. And then on June 12th of 2016, I got called in to work on overtime that night as a B shift. And on that night was the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. And this is another thing that I kind of kept to myself for the reasons of not wanting to be criticized by other guys I work with. Because the truth is I got called into Engine 9, which is on the far west side of the city. So I wasn't there. I heard, it's again not a coincidence to me that I got there a couple hours before. I was listening to the radio when the call came in. I heard the call come in. Shots fired, gunshot wound, GSW at Pulse nightclub, multiple calls, and then hear Lieutenant Odell coming over the radio. Hey, we can still hear gunshots, you know. And I'm not going to get into the details of that night, but for those of you who aren't familiar, there was a terrorist who went in and killed 49 people, shot a lot more. So the largest death toll on American soil since the September 11th attacks. And we end up getting drawn into it later because my engineer was a bomb tech. So by this point, all the patients are gone. We get drawn into downtown first just to share, to cover the calls there, and then we get called down once they got him holed up in the bathroom, and they were worried he might have explosives somewhere else. So the bomb tech guys get called down there. So I'm kind of just there, and dude, the look on those guys' faces was 1,000-yard stares across the board, man. And I never told anybody about it because how can I complain or like. Yeah. You know, I don't want to get labeled PTSD just because, like, dude, those guys are the ones that were, what they described was like probably what it's like to be on the front lines of a war.
Yeah.
Like people walking around with holes missing in them. So I kind of kept it to myself. You know, and honestly, I didn't really know at the time what had happened, like in me.
Right.
But something changed. Something clicked in me that night. And when they set off the bomb, there was a single explosion, and then there was the explosion, a single gunshot followed by a barrage of other gunshots. And the first officer in the hole got shot in the head. He survived. His helmet took the bullet.
Yeah.
It's on display at OPD.
Yeah.
And then OPD took care of business. But I remember feeling a strange feeling in the air that night, and it's like nothing I can describe. The only way I can describe it is it felt like the presence of evil.
It certainly was.
Yeah. It was eerie. And I noticed after that, like I said, now I know I'm not alone. And I'm very well aware there's real evil out there. And, you know, I don't want to sound like I said, it was not a coincidence that I was there that night, but I don't want to sound like God orchestrated them.
No, that's not what you're saying. Yeah.
This event just to teach me a lesson. That's not at all what I'm saying, but I think
many people learned lessons that night.
Yeah, and I think me being there was like, hey, you need to get it together. It's time to grow up.
Correct.
And that was 2016 and 2017. I bought my house out here in Satellite Beach. I moved out of downtown Orlando. I left all that behind. And I was like, it's time to grow up. I don't want to live this life anymore. You know, at this point, I'm ready to make a change.
How old are you in 2016?
30.
Okay.
Yeah, 30 years old. And that started what I consider a 7-year battle with alcoholism, because I wanted to leave it behind. But I didn't know what I was fighting. because I thought you could just go from, all right, I'm just not going to live that lifestyle anymore, but I can have a beer with my buddies at the bar. What's wrong with that?
Right.
But it didn't work that way for me.
Yeah.
I left the bar scene, but I brought me with me. And, dude, it was off and on, man. It was off and on over those years where I would try really hard. Like I'm focused on work, or I'm focused on getting healthy. And then just to turn around and, you know, maybe it was another, cause I still would go on trips with the guys and do those things. Cause again, I'm like, well, that's different. And I would go back and forth, and it felt like for a while, it felt like I was two different people, man. I was really starting to question after this started to really heat up of like, man, am I schizophrenic or something? Because why do I care? You know, like it's like during the day, sober Dan cares all about taking care of himself, cares about the job, cares about being responsible. But then Whiskey Dan takes over. Yeah. And I'm self-sabotaging.
You see this in so many different arenas, right? Whether it's fire department, it doesn't matter, right? You're functioning throughout the day only to blow it all at night, right? Whether it's the kind of alcoholic or drug user that's in their room alone, you know, or is it what we would consider a social drinker? Yeah. You know, and that's kind of how we write it off is, it's just social, you know? Well,
yeah. And that's when I really started to realize it was like, this isn't good, because like I said, I left the social part of it. I left downtown. Like, sure, there's some bars here and there.
Sure.
But I still enjoyed my drink here, and it's a long day, or I like a Corona when I'm doing the lawn. And that's also what I would like to help like people understand is like, dude, I wasn't the kind of alcoholic that woke up in the morning with the shakes like I got to take a shot.
Right.
It started, some days it was just a couple beers, but other days it would be a 6-pack, and other days it would get worse because now I'm going to meet up with whatever and we get some shots or whatever.
Right.
So it wasn't always like, and that was the other lie that I think a lot of firemen tell themselves is they're like, I don't drink every third day, so I can't be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Can confirm that is wrong. But you start to tell yourself these things, and you start to like to make these rationalizations. And this is, you know, I've heard guys say, well, I can't tell anybody, you know, they're an alcoholic or not. I can. You know, there's some dead giveaway warning signs. If you got an alter ego, you're probably going to end up in an AA room at some point.
Yeah. Hopefully.
An alcoholic AA room.
Yeah. Hopefully.
I'm just joking about that one, but there's some real ones, like people who aren't alcoholics don't think about how many drinks they're going to have. People who aren't alcoholics don't try to limit how many drinks they have. They don't go, well, all right, I'm just not going to drink whiskey anymore. Because that was part of it too. It's like, well, whiskey just makes me a little rowdy or whatever. It's just, I just won't drink liquor. I just won't do this. Like, you know, they go to dinner and they maybe have a drink, and maybe they don't even finish that beer, which was wild to me. Like, you're gonna leave that beer there? But anyway, so it really started to tighten its grip on me, and you know, I couldn't wrap my head around, like, why do I keep doing these things that are against my own self-interest? Why do I continue to poison myself? You know, why am I not strong enough? You know,
you know who else makes that plea? Paul in Romans.
Yeah.
Why do I keep doing the things I don't want to do, and I can't seem to do the things I know I'm supposed to do?
Yeah. Wretched man I am. And I really do believe, like, I don't know if I've like demon possessed or whatever, but I definitely opened up when I drank. Like, I definitely opened it up for somebody else to take control. So, you know, again, kind of trying to keep this stuff to myself. I know it wasn't all, but over the years it started to get worse, and I did start to seek the Lord again. And, you know, I'd send up foxhole prayers a couple times where things were really bad, and I always got through. You know, I've heard people say foxhole prayers are cheap, yada, yada. No, man, prayer's a prayer, dude. If that's, I mean, we don't want to be only making foxhole prayers.
For sure, yeah.
But
all throughout the Bible, men cry out.
Yeah.
You're crying out to the Lord, right? All throughout. I mean, read the Psalms. All throughout the Bible, all throughout history, men cry out. People cry out.
Yeah. I mean, you got kids, right? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
Like, say, you know, your kids go away to college and they're busy for a couple weeks, and then you don't hear from them. But then when you hear from them, they're like, I really need gas money. Like,
yeah, I'm not going to deny that.
You're still you're happy to hear from your daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a friend of mine told me about Coastline Community Church. This is a little church here, little local church. Another reason I love and support the local church, because they had such a big impact in my walk, man. I started going in there and just kind of sitting in the back row from time to time. You know, I knew I wasn't going to be good on my own by this point. You know, that idea of like, I don't know, for you've been married a long time, so you might not relate, but like having been in and out a couple like long-term relationships, like you get single again and you're like, the freedom, I don't have to respond, I don't have to tell anybody where I'm going to be, you know, what I'm doing. You know, that starts to work against you when you don't have anybody pushing back.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't have a good foundation.
Were you dabbling in sobriety at this point?
Not really.
Okay.
I was trying to cut back.
Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to be a responsible alcoholic.
Gotcha.
Like,
Okay.
I mean, that's not what I would have called it.
Right. Sure.
But yeah, I wasn't trying to quit drinking completely.
Gotcha. You were limiting.
Yeah. I was trying to, you know, what I didn't realize is like I was trying to slow the train down. But if you're on a train, no matter how fast it's going, it's going to end up in the same place. So knowing that I wasn't going to be good alone, it was good to go to the church, but I also was like, I need a good woman in my life. You know, I'm like, because I knew every time I was with a good woman, I've had a couple, like where, you know, like I talked about earlier, like they would get me to quit dipping. Or they would get me to, you know, give me that little pushback when I had too much to drink. You know, and my pride didn't want to like admit that I needed that, but I was starting to realize that. And I prayed. I no lie, I prayed to God. I said, if you ever put a good woman in my life again, I will not take her for granted. And then I met Susan shortly after that, and we hit it off, and we had a lot of fun together. I felt pretty natural, and you know, honestly, I knew right away. I was like, this is the one. And you know, part of the reason why we got along is because we both like to drink.
All right.
You know,
Sure.
but God knows us, man. He knows who we need to get together. And so, you know, I started to do better having that, having somebody else in my life. But, you know, I still struggled. And in some ways it intensified, you know, because now you have, you know, you're starting to drink together with your lady. Now you get an argument,
Right.
and it just exacerbates things, that kind of stuff. But we kept going to Coastline. She would come with me, and man, I am forever grateful that Coastline Community Church is such a welcoming and open environment. And it absolutely just irks me to the core when I hear people talk about not being accepted in the church or not accepting people in the church. Because the truth is, I had a lot of guilt that kept me from going into that church, from living the way that I was living. And I would make the joke like, oh, I'm going to burn up if I go in there. And I've heard other people say that, you know, because you feel like you don't belong.
Right.
Until you really understand and read what the word says.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if you keep living that way, you're going to feel that, but you feel it for a reason. But you shouldn't feel that from the people, I guess is what I'm getting at. Like,
Yeah. You know, I mean, this stupid analogy of we're not part of the planning committee, we're part of the welcoming committee,
There
right?
you go.
And so it's up to God's plan and someone's acceptance as to whether or not they are going to believe, you know.
Exactly.
My job is to love you,
Yeah.
you know, because I've been loved, now I am free to love. And that gets twisted, you know. And again, it's something, as believers, we will continue to fight that judgmental side of us, right? On our best day, we're good at it. On our worst day, we're a bunch of judgmental hypocrites.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I do think sometimes we can't help when you see somebody that's so different from you.
sure.
But there's a difference between being like, you're not welcome here. And like, because we have, you know, I'm involved in the church now. I'm on the safety team, and so I got to keep my eyes out for squirrely people,
Sure.
but I got to do it gently
Sure.
and like go and really what that looks like is just go and talk to them and be
That's
nice.
it.
Hey man, what's going on?
Yeah.
You know, like, and welcome to the church,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, because of that, my life was transformed really.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of little people, places, and parts to this puzzle that were all equally important. And that's one of them. And So yeah, I expected to walk in there and feel like I didn't belong, but I did. So that struggle went on for a little while, and then I had a real rock bottom moment, and now I was like, all right, I got to give up alcohol completely. You know, I started having blackouts. They started occurring more frequently, and you know, I'd break something or I'd say something, do something really embarrassing.
What's a blackout versus passing out?
Good question. You know, because I used to think a blackout was a myth. So a blackout is literally, I'm awake talking to you right now. You have no idea, but I won't remember none of it. And I had, and my wife took a couple videos to show me, and it was like somebody else was behind the wheel, man. But yeah, so basically, like, I might have been awake, walking around, doing things, talking, whatever, for like 7 hours that I don't recall.
Oh, wow.
It's literally like amnesia.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's scary.
Yeah.
That started happening. You know, I think like when you drink a lot, the night can be fuzzy.
Sure.
And so discerning between like, but when it's like, dude, I don't remember nothing. And then you see a video of yourself doing stuff, you're like, it's scary. So yeah, I was like, all right. I don't want to, I embarrass myself in front of my whole family, man. My young niece, and I just pray that she doesn't have any, like, I don't know.
Is this the event?
Nope. Yeah. Not yet. And I kept this one away from the department. A couple of my close friends knew. But yeah, I was like, no, I got to give up alcohol for real. For real, it's ruining my life. But I had this stupid idea that I could do it on my own. And I had the idea of the cookie analogy. You've probably heard this, you know, it's like someone tells you not to have cookies. What do you want? A cookie? You know, I don't even like sweets, but you tell me I can't have a cookie, I want a cookie. So I was like, I was trying to play mind games with myself. I was like, all right, I'm a stubborn man. I know that. That's true. But I was like, if I tell myself I can't drink, that's all I'm going to think about. So I'm like, let me just focus on positive things, and naturally the drinking thing will go away. And honestly, that worked for a while. And again, I wasn't focused. I wasn't like counting days or whatever. It was probably like 6 months or so where I wasn't drinking. My wife would have a glass of wine here and there. No big deal. But, so I went down that road, and I remember sitting in the back row of the congregation one Sunday morning. Dude, I was feeling so low, so defeated after that happened. And our pastor made the call for that prayer of salvation. And inside, I wanted to pray that prayer again. You know, like I said, I did it when I was younger, man, and I wanted to say it again, and I wanted to raise my hand, but there was something stopping me, man. There was something keeping me, like I had this turmoil going on inside me that I just couldn't shake. And my pastor, I swear this felt like an eternity that this went on. And he was like, if anybody wants, has never given their life to Christ, you know, just raise your hand, slip your hand up, you know, and I'm going to pray with you, you know, the old altar call kind of thing. And it just kept going on, man. And I remember wanting to get out of there with all my being. Was like, I just want to, like, all right, finish up. Yeah. And this battle's going on in my head. It's like, he's like, anyone else, you know, if you can't point to a place and time, and I want to raise my hand. I want to recommit my life to Christ because I'm serious about it this time.
Right.
You know, and I just remember that it was like, and I don't know if there was an actual applause going on or if it was just in my head, but it's like everything got louder and louder and louder, like applause. And everyone, a hand would go up. Yep, I see you. Yeah, over there, I see you. Yep. And it kept going. Anyone else for an eternity. And finally it all boiled over into like a crescendo, and I slipped my hand up just barely, and he goes, yep. And then everything just stopped, and a peace and a calm came over me, and we prayed that prayer together. And I swear something lifted off of me that day, man. And it definitely set me on the right path. You know, I wish that I had completely changed everything that day. But unfortunately, like I said, we haven't even got to the real bad stuff. But I took sobriety really seriously now. I probably made it about 6 months during this period. And then things were going well until December 29th of 2022, Susan and I decided to get married. January 30th of 2023, Susan's transported to the hospital as a stroke alert. She's 38 years old. She suffered multiple microbleeds due to a genetic condition called CADASIL, cerebral autosomal dominant arteriopathy, subcortical artifact, with subcortical infarcts, leukoencephalopathy. It's a mouthful. For basically that she has these little microbleeds in her brain, and it was devastating. And she spent several days in the hospital. She became very weak. She lost her ability to communicate completely. Not just her speech. She couldn't signal to me.
Really?
To go to the bathroom or something. I got her a little bell, and she would just shake her hand at me like this. And after a few days in the hospital, I was like, I got to get her out of here, because
This is within like a month of your wedding?
yeah. And that wasn't our real wedding. Because I was starting to get closer to God, I felt convicted about us living together and sleeping together. And I'm like, let's go do the courthouse thing.
Right.
We weren't supposed to get married till May.
Right.
You tell me God didn't have a hand in this?
Yeah.
She wouldn't have had insurance.
Right. Yeah.
She wouldn't have been covered by insurance because we weren't married. And I don't know if they would have covered it after or whatever,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
if she had a stroke a month earlier, she wasn't covered. If she had a stroke like a week later, she was supposed to be in Jamaica on her honeymoon.
Wow.
Like, the timing of it is,
Yeah, it's easy to see looking back,
yeah.
not in it, right?
The timing of it, the way everything worked out, like you said, it looking in retrospect, all this stuff happened for a reason, man. And, you know, I think God knew that was going to happen. He knew it was a ticking time bomb, and he put us together. And, you know, gave me that little nudge of conviction to get married. I don't know. That's the way I see it now. But it was really rough, man. We spent several days in the hospital, and I'm like, I got to get her out of here. Because I just know how much, like, dude, laying in a hospital bed makes you so weak. There's nothing for her condition. There's nothing that can be done for her. They're basically just monitoring her. So I'm like, we need to get her set up for a long-term care. And we had a good idea about the condition because her sister has it. It's genetic. She has 2 sisters with it, 3 out of the 4. So as all this stuff is happening, man, it's like fireman mode kicks in. I'm like, all right, well, we got to get her care set up. We got to find the doctors that know this type of condition, and we got to get her in occupational therapy. We got to get her in speech therapy. So I'm just focused on that. And honestly, man, maybe I don't know if I was overly optimistic or naive or whatever, but I really was like, she's going to bounce right back from this. She's going to be walking down the aisle in a couple months. And, you know, I felt like she was going to make a full recovery. And after a couple months, it started to become apparent that this was a long road. You know, I was still really optimistic. Another little, like, God thread in there is, for some reason, like, probably 5 to 8 years before that, I got a random interest in neuroplasticity. I mean, like, I'm a fireman, paramedic. I'm not even a really good paramedic. So why am I reading science books about neuroplasticity? I don't know, but I read several of them. Yeah. You know, and I got all into it for a while. No, I still can't remember why. Right. Thought it was interesting, I guess. And, you know, did that make me like an expert on neuroplasticity?
More than the next guy.
Not at all. But what it gave me was hope, because I knew what people were capable of recovering from. Right. And where the common knowledge, and I think people are starting to know this now, but, you know, 10 years ago, you know, people were being told that whatever recovery you had in 6 months that's where you're at. That's your deficit now. Right. But that's not the truth. It's not the case. People continue to get better. The problem is there is like a spike in that recovery in the first like 6 months, like a bounce back. But what happens is, after that, if, say, your weakness is your right arm, you just start naturally using your left arm. Right. It's called learned non-use. Right. So I got all these little nuggets that's like equipped me to, all right, we're gonna do this. So I start getting her. We get her set up at her parents' house to help take care of her, and after a few months, it started to become apparent this was gonna be a long road. And as the reality of her condition set in and the dust settles, that this is our life, And, you know, I talked to you earlier about what that condition, the outcome is, or the,
kind of prognosis of
it can be really scary.
it.
So I began to drink again, and I started having just a drink at the end of the night. I was sleeping at my in-laws. I'm like, it's uncomfortable here, and I can't sleep, and I'm stressed, and, you know, anyone would in this situation. And I would tell myself all these excuses, and the truth is, no, not anyone would. A person that loves his wife and cares for her, like, they're gonna be at their best. Like, I see that now, but at the time, you know, the enemy starts getting in your ear, and what's a beer hurt, and it started sneaking back in. And when it really started to become a problem was after a while, we left with the in-laws. Susan started recovering to the point where we went home, and now I'm not doing all her stuff for her anymore. She's, you know, essentially, you know, we have kind of a new normal life, and unfortunately we started kind of slipping back into old habits, drinking. She started drinking again. And the truth was, it stressed me out a lot because I worried about her condition. I had, you know, some serious concerns. She was going to have another stroke at any minute. And, you know, I don't know if I just wasn't strong enough to want to give up alcohol myself. Because I would, you know, we'd have these conversations about, we got to live healthy, because that's about the best thing you can do with that condition is like live a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
And actually people who have strokes at younger ages tend to not have another one because they change their lifestyle.
Yeah.
You know, hers is a little different cause, but still the same principles of taking care of yourself. So I have all this stress about like us not taking care of ourselves. And I'm just, you know, honestly, when she started drinking again, and she didn't drink the way like I did, she's having a glass of wine here, but here and there. But when she did,
but you were already sneaking, so it like made it okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, yeah. And when she started even just a glass of wine, I could tell she was different. Like, and it's like, dude, it's hard to show her that, like, look, I don't know. It scared me. And, it all kind of came to a head when, you know, at this time, like I said, dealing with all of that. On top of that, I'm on Rescue 2 this whole time. Just got promoted off of Tower 15 and went to Rescue 2 for guys that aren't from our department.
Yeah,
it's one of our busiest rescues.
For sure.
And it was not kind to me. I hear guys say sometimes they're like, oh, every once in a while we get you know, all night we're, you know, only one after midnight. I'm like, where were those nights when I was on?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's how I felt about Rescue 11. Where was that?
But I was probably already so just stressed out. It all probably hit harder anyway. But yeah, so like, I'm not doing well. And, and I'm trying to take the lieutenant's test, which.
So are you already doing the boat stuff and all that stuff, traveling around with that?
Yeah. So I've been doing the boat races for like, probably like 10 years or something at this point. Yeah.
Which is, what is that for somebody who doesn't know? So.
Yeah. So, I worked, you know, kind of per diem. We would go work for the boat races, offshore boat racing. So the big, like, cigarette boats, bunch of different, there's a few different organizations we would work for, you know, kind of work for a bunch of different ones. And, I was on one of these trips down, in Key West, and
those trips are a lot of times parties afterwards with the guys, with the, you know, like it's a circuit, right? It's kind of a traveling circus as it goes around.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a lot of drinking and that kind of stuff. But, you know, honestly, I'd started to try to pull away from that there as well.
Okay.
It was great, man. Like, because now I wasn't concerned with just having a good time. I started to really get into the tactics of how do we do an extrication on a boat when it's upside down in the water.
Right.
You know, like I went and got us some air tools, a couple, like an air sawzall,
right? Because
you can't use electric tools underwater.
Right.
You know, I like the challenge of it, man.
Right.
It was a lot of fun for me. And that was a big part of the reason why I started to feel that, like, that lifestyle. Because they would take us kind of all over the country, the Great Lakes, and you'd go like a bar in Michigan City, Indiana. Like I said, I mean, it's all the same anywhere you go.
Mm-hmm.
So that stuff really just wore out for me. And I took a year off. I took that whole season off because of Susan recovering in the lieutenant's test. And
Right.
so I made it just for the World Championship in Key West, which is the biggest event, it's the World Championship. And we were down there. We had a pretty eventful day that day, pretty serious wreck. So we had a meeting after to talk about it. And I went back to the hotel room, and Susan had been drinking. And I could just tell, man, like I said, she wasn't, it didn't take much for her. Her biggest deficit is her speech.
Mm-hmm.
She's recovered a lot. For anybody listening and worried about her, she's doing great. But that day I came home, man, and it was like, it just destroyed me. And I didn't know what to do, man, because I couldn't keep her from drinking.
Yeah.
I couldn't control her. I couldn't do the rehab for her.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't, all this stuff that I'm trying to control.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this is no good reason or no excuse or anything like that, but I just didn't know what else to do. And I went and got us dinner. I waited till we ate and she fell asleep, and I started drinking. And I wasn't drinking to relax or take the edge off this time. Like, I was drinking with a mission.
Why'd you have to wait for her to go to sleep? Is that like your own thing?
No. It's funny how you try to do everything you can to control, like your environment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I stopped going to bars.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get in trouble.
Right.
So I'm drinking at home now. Well,
Right.
I'll get in a fight with the wife
Right.
or whatever. So if I wait till she falls asleep, I'm in the confines of my hotel
Okay,
room.
I got you.
I'm safe.
So you were actually planning this out like to be safe,
Yeah.
not drive,
I didn't,
not.
Yeah, I didn't premeditatively
No,
plan
no,
it
but
out,
I mean, like
but
in your head, this was
yeah,
your.
when I got home, I was like, I know I can get blasted
Yeah,
and put myself out of my misery.
gotcha.
Like, that was what I was trying to do. Like I
Gotcha.
said, I wasn't trying to, all that time in between up to then, I was still like trying to keep control. I was,
Yeah,
let's go.
yeah. This was beyond let's have fun. This is let's
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted, and I was like, I'll deal with it. Tomorrow is our off day. I'll deal with the hangover or whatever. I waited till she fell asleep. Like I said, I know I'm not out on Duval Street
Right.
trying to have a good time. I'm safe here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of those things for me. It was like realizing you can't control, like, when God wants to do work in your life, you can't run from him, man.
Yeah.
And he'll find you where you are. And like I said, I drank a lot, and I drank a lot quickly. And this was like, I don't know, like probably 9-10 o'clock at night, with the last I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And the tape stops, and I woke up in a jail cell.
And this is one of those blackout moments.
Complete blackout. I mean, according to Susan, we were, at some point I woke her up.
Yeah.
I don't know how, when, why. I don't know what happened, at what point. Maybe we got in an argument, but I got rowdy. I broke a window in the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
The cops got called, and like I said, I've seen the footage of it. It's not pretty. It's very embarrassing. Very embarrassing for the department. So, and this is why I couldn't talk about it a year ago when we started this podcast.
Right.
I trying to go through this. I'm like, I don't want to drag the department's name through the mud again. Because my biggest fear is that somebody's going to go, they're going to try and dig that video up. I actually cut it out of the first podcast we did together. You mentioned it.
Oh, did I?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay. But at the times, a lot of stuff was unsettled.
Gotcha.
So last thing I thought about trying to message the guy and see if he'll take it down or something. But I'm like, let sleeping dogs lie, man. But
Well, I think you're a success story at this point. It's a lot of hard road to get there, but I believe that. I mean, you've mentioned the grace that the department has given you. You've mentioned, you paid your price.
yeah.
You're still paying,
Yeah. I just know firemen, dude. Like
Yeah, for sure.
I remember having this conversation at the fire department not too long ago. And we were talking about like some of the gruesome videos that you can find online. And the conversation we were having was like how it's not good for us, you know, the live leak kind of
Right,
stuff,
right.
you know, but we're firemen, we can't help it. And sure enough, like 5 minutes into that conversation, the guy's like, dude, look at this one. I'm like, we were just talking about how bad this is for
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Can't help it.
yeah.
So yeah, getting back on track with the testimony. I woke up in a jail cell. I had no idea how I got there. No idea what I did. It's one of the scariest things I've ever experienced in my life. No idea what my charges were. They didn't even tell me. Finally got bailed out. I was there almost 2 days. And I do think this is an important part of my story, kind of what happened, because I fasted and prayed for 2 days. Not really intentionally. I was just like sick to my stomach. I couldn't eat. And I was praying out of desperation, you know. So I spent 2 days in isolation because I'm a fireman. They put me in solitary confinement. So I never saw any of the other people in there. I heard them. Jail is every bit as bad as you think it is. It sucks. And but I just laid there and prayed. You know, I'd pace the cell and pray. And when I got discharged and I saw the picture of my mugshot, it was an eerie reminder and an instant flashback to that man I saw in the mirror at 24 years old. Like, that was the man I saw in the mirror. And at this point, I'm ready to do whatever I have to do. I'm like, God, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I tried to give up drinking. I tried to do this. I tried to do it my way. Like, Jesus, take the wheel, literally, man.
Yeah.
And so I was, whatever, let's go. I'm going to go to rehab. You know, not just at this point, I assumed I was getting fired.
Yeah.
I assumed that my job was gone. It wasn't just to like,
So you had some pretty serious charges at this point for that to be going through your head. Also, you know, right? I mean,
yeah, I had a couple felony charges.
yeah.
So if you're a felon in the state of Florida, you can't hold your paramedic or firefighter license.
Right.
So I was like, I'm going to go paint houses. Like, I don't know. I had no idea what I was going to do. This is literally the only thing I'm qualified to do. And I'm like, all right, whatever, you know, I'm a believer at this point. Just didn't know how to walk it out. But I'm like, all right, I know I need to surrender to God. And that was when the real surrender happened, through all this process. And I was like, all right, let's go to rehab. And I really wanted to get into a faith-based rehab. And we really don't even have time to go into all the stuff that kind of went on there. And even just getting me into a rehab. But one small thing was like, one of our, someone else I know is a fireman, went to a rehab. And from the time they went, he's like, you need to go here. It's all, it's a fire-based rehab, shatterproof or something. You need to go there. It's all firemen. It'll be good. They'll take care of you, whatever. Our insurance changed from that time to this time.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like trying to go there, and I keep getting suggested this place, Banyan. And I'm like, oh, I really want to go to a faith-based place. So we tried to go to the faith-based place, and they wouldn't, they wanted to take me, but they didn't have any beds. They called back later. So we went back and forth, and finally was just, all right, we'll go to that first place. And man, it was definitely no coincidence that all those things happened, man, because there was not a Bible in this place, except for one guy that I met. But God was there. God met me where I was. He met me in that place, and he put people around me through the whole process, man. Like, it would take so much more time to go through every single person I met there. And I journaled a lot of this.
Right.
Maybe I'll write it out someday or something, but every single person there taught me a lesson, gave me some key piece of advice. And it was, man, it was just such a powerful experience. You know, but also if anybody's like, might be struggling with stuff and thinking about it, like, that place changed my life. It's not nearly as bad as you think it's going to be. But that's not to say it didn't suck. Like, it was scary.
Sure.
I had no idea what to expect. But like I said, man, if you lean on God, he will meet you wherever you are, man. And you know, it was really scary because I didn't know, Susan we were living at home, but she hadn't really spent a ton of time by herself. So I didn't know how much she was going to be, like how she was going to be taken care of. What if something like I had every reason in the world to be like super stressed out through this whole thing. I'm like, I'm probably not going to have a job to come back to. I don't know where my wife is. You have no contact with the outside world. They take your phone, they take everything. But for some reason, man, I had the most amazing experience, and I had just God guiding me through every part of that. So, and the reason I know that this wasn't just like another rock bottom, or this isn't just like, oh, you just messed up enough, is because after a few days of that, the thoughts start to come back in your head of like, well, other guys have been arrested and they've survived, or, and I'm like, and for the first several days, I'm like I said, I'm all in. I'm going to every class. I was like, I'm a student in college again. I'm taking notes. I'm going to every class. I'm paying attention, doing everything I can in the therapy sessions. And about the fourth day in, I start to get that feeling of like, I've heard this before, and like, it's like old me came back, and something triggered in me, and I had a little panic moment. Red flag. Like, no, dude, you're not going back to who you were.
Right.
Like, I don't want to go back to that. I don't ever want to pick up a drink again. And I spent that whole day in prayer, man. I hit my knees, like actually hit my knees and prayed for the first time. When I say I was praying in jail, I was like cuddled up in that scratchy blanket going like cold thing, like, God, please help me. Like, I didn't know how to pray.
Right.
And I was like, I was talking to God. I was walking and talking to God. I was hitting my knees in the parking lot where there was a church across the street, praying up to that cross. Like, dude, powerful stuff happened, man. Like, I'm out there praying on my knees, and a shooting star just goes right across. Like, I'm getting all these little confirmations, man, which like I said, I can't even, we don't have enough time to get into, but God answered me. Let's just put it that way, man. Like, I really cried out to him. I said, I don't want to go back to this life. I don't, I really started to believe that, like, like, zebras don't change their stripes. Yeah. You're always going to be an alcoholic, man. And he answered me, man. And that night, a guest speaker showed up, and this guy was me in the future. Every single story he told was like exactly what I needed to hear. Every single thing he said, it was like literally, he was just hitting me in the heart the whole night. And I remember looking at him, and he's kind of to the side, and I'm sitting there like trying to focus my eyes on him, and I couldn't figure out why I can't focus on this guy. And I see this glow around him, and I'm not kidding you, man. This is what, like, it hit me. I was like, is this what angels look like?
Yeah.
Is this what, and I don't know if that guy was like an angel, but
who knows?
I think I did recognize that as that was a divine presence.
Yeah.
And I've seen and felt that a couple times since then. And in fact, the next night, so this guy's here telling my story, but like 30 years in advance. Like, he's like 20, 30 years older than me. Yeah. Like, playing out what's going to happen if I keep going down this road.
Yeah.
And he is the guy that gets to that point where he's waking up in the morning with shakes. He's lost his job, and his family disowns him, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So here's God sending me this guy that's like, I'm showing you your future again.
Yeah, you've kind of had the look in the mirror a couple times, right? And then here you are in the jail cell living it out, and then you have this actual human form of the future, Yeah.
And the next night, this dude looked exactly like my brother. Like, I'm not kidding, man. I thought I was hallucinating.
This is a different speaker.
It's a different speaker the next night, and he's got this glow around him, just like the other guy did. And this kind of kicked off, these two guys coming, kind of kicked off everything that happened after that. It was just like, it was, man, we started putting a Bible study together. We started getting, again, we don't have time to get into all of it, but God put all these people in my life, and I know it was him because of the way things worked out.
Right.
My roommate is now still one of my best friends. We text every single day.
Right.
We keep each other accountable and strong, and so him and another guy, we we get his Bible and we start photocopying pages of it. And I'm like, I don't know how to read this thing, but we're going to just start.
Wow.
Somebody told me to start reading Romans.
Right.
So I take it to my therapist. I'm like, hey, can we photocopy this?
Wow.
Made like
It's
30
like
copies.
literal in the closet persecution kind of thing. Where they talk about like in China, they have, if they have one page of the Bible, you know, they're huddled around.
Yeah,
Here
man.
you are.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Like, and there was so many in people in there hungry for God's word and ready to change their lives too. And it started off like 4 or 5 people the first night. And then it started to catch wind around there. And by the time I left there was like 45 people in this room, standing room only.
Wow.
And one night there was, I think, probably 30 of us. I got all this stuff written down. There's like 30 of us in it. And I made that altar call salvation prayer. I just felt called to do it, man. I was like, I had no idea how to do it. I was just repeating what Pastor Jason would say. And
Yeah.
bro, sure enough, every single person in that room raised their hand
Wow.
and prayed that prayer with me, man.
Wow. I just got chills, bro.
Really? I don't know how many of them kept on that road, but I know if it's anything like me, it sowed a seed.
Yeah, for sure.
And that, like I said, that was just the beginning. There's so many things I would love to talk about, how, like, because people ask me how I know, like when they say, like, how do you know God's speaking to you? I could tell you, but it's not. Does he probably audibly speak to some people pretty clearly? Sure. I'm sure it's not often though. And the way he speaks, and that's like, I met this guy, I'd call him Brother John. Brother John, this dude from, I don't know where he's from, but he has a strong Southern accent. And Brother John taught me how to understand how God spoke to me, man. And you know, he showed me the sign out front of the building, a little roadway sign that said, and he's out there praying, God, I need help. He looks up and it says, look left, there's the church. And there's the, you know, it's like, look left. And he's like, oh man, thank you, God. He looks back at the sign and says, you're welcome. You know, like little things like that.
Yeah.
It was wild, man. And that happened like so much and so often. I thought I was losing my mind, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, is this real life?
Yeah.
But it was such a powerful experience, man. And yeah, my mom sent me a Bible. So we started, we had a couple of them to go around. And
Is this over like 90 days? 90-day rehab, 180?
24 days I was there. Yeah.
All right. So all of this in a relatively short period of time,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it was. But it's wild. We were talking with Paul earlier about how, like, we're just so distracted these days, man. And I continue to go back to the things that I learned there. And I'm like, how did, I felt like, although I had all this stuff going on, I felt at peace and I felt focused and I felt like I had a job, like I had a purpose.
Yeah.
So a big part of that is God, and that I stayed in prayer and I started every day with prayer. But I'm like, I also walked a lot. This is just nothing else to do.
A lot of that is they strip everything from you.
Yeah. They
They-
took everything. There's no social media. You can watch TV, but I just didn't do that. So I'm like, all right, what are the things that really, when things start getting out of whack, I go back to those basics. Like, all right, I start the day with prayer. I do a lot of walking. I try to be mindful of how much I'm on my phone. A couple of those basic things, man. So another little example of how God was speaking to me, man, it was literally like the Bible was like my guiding screenplay while I was going through this. And as this is happening, I'm having this thought and I'm like, man, that's really narcissistic and grandiose to think that the Bible is written for you, buddy. And as I'm thinking this, I pop open the Bible and literally the devotion in that Bible is grandiose thinking. And guess where it is? It's in the book of Daniel. And it's a little story about Nebuchadnezzar and how he worshipped himself and he built his statue and all that, and he wanted everyone to worship him. And it was like God telling me, again, not audibly, but in the wisdom in my brain was like, no, this is what somebody who's grandiose looks like. What's happening here is just I'm laying out the plans I have for you. And it was really comforting. So yeah, I felt like he gave me a purpose in that place to start that Bible study. And, I wonder sometimes if all that was in preparation to help do this. Because again, I was like starting to lead a Bible study. I'm like, I don't know how to read the Bible. Literally never opened it myself.
Is there a point in there when you are born again? Is there a point, have we come to the point in your story where you feel like this is it? This is, from this point, I hit my knees, I woke up, I did whatever. Is that while you're in rehab?
Yeah. I would say that was that fourth day
Yeah.
when I cried out to God
Mm-hmm.
and he answered me that night.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like things changed that day.
It sounds like it from the story. I just wanted to just spell it out. Like
Yeah.
this is,
Yeah, that was the moment. It wasn't, like I said, it's not the rock bottom of knowing I got arrested. All right, I messed up really bad. I got to make a change. It was when I really cried out to God and I surrendered and I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do. And that day, like I said, a few days into that experience, and that's when all this stuff started happening.
yeah.
You know, I didn't have any spiritual experiences leading up like the first few days of that.
Mm-hmm.
It was,
Yeah. I think the skeptic says, well, of course you cried out to God. You look at all these ways that you messed up and you didn't have anywhere else to turn and all of these other things. And what I hear is you saying, yeah, I had nowhere else to turn. I had nothing left but to surrender. And look at how God has proven trustworthy, how he's proven faithful in your walk, and how he's using you and how he trusts you to do this podcast, how he's trusting you to lead your wife, how he's trusting you to be involved at the church, how he's providing for you. And so many times we get lost in the weeds, but really it's just the faith to take the next step. And that's what it sounds like when you hit that moment on that fourth day. You just started taking the next steps. You just started being what I would consider meek, right? A person who's willing to be led. Yeah. And no less a man, no less strong, no less all of the things that make us men and women, but willing to be led, surrendered to the rider, right? As I like to say about a bit broke horse.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And so I think that is truly sounds like the moment when you left all that behind and you started looking forward,
Wherever you want this horse to go, God, you lead it, man. Yeah, I really felt like I left that place a new creation. I had a new purpose in life. And like I said, at this point, I didn't know if I was going to have a job until I got out and I talked to one of the guys from the union. And he was like, dude, if they would have fired you, they probably would have done it already. But, obviously a lot of it had to do with how things were going to play out legally, which, that takes a long time to play out. But I knew I was a new creation. I knew I'd never pick up a drink again. I can't describe it, man. Like it literally was lifted off of me. I'll never pick up another drink. I have no desire. If you want to drink, I don't care. Like it's not going to tempt me. Yeah. I'm not going to challenge myself.
Yeah. You're not going to stay on the railroad tracks when the train's coming.
Exactly. Yeah. But I just, dude, I don't, in fact, I don't want to like be critical or judgmental of other people because some people can have a drink and it's fine or whatever. But, my opinion is honestly, does it do anything good for you? No, you might as well throw that money.
I have another buddy who's told me I think about it every day and he's been sober 13 years. So, I mean, and he's also a believer, it's not for you, it's that, and it's probably almost repulsive in that regard, and for him, it's something that he still battles with. So it's not I don't hear you passing judgment on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I know how that is. Cause I know, and other guys with that, like nicotine and stuff, I know guys have said like, dude, I've been quit for 8 years. If somebody put one in front of me right now, I do have that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure.
I get it. And that's why I know it was divine, man.
Yeah.
I know God freed me from that.
Yeah. It's shackles, right? The shackles are broke off. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And I can't, you already talked about a lot of the stuff God has done in my life since then, but the blessings that have come since, it's easy to say because we see like, oh, I'm a first time offender. You could have got out, but when your fate is in the hands of a lawyer, your fate is in the hands of somebody else, you realize how tough this system can be. It's scary, man. And they didn't like, Monroe County doesn't do things like Brevard County or whatever. And I'm just saying in general, like, you don't know, man. And the fact that I got shown mercy by the state, I think part of that was I was doing everything I needed to do. But either way, man, I got the charges reduced, to, somebody will probably look it up anyway, but I got drunken disorderly, resisting arrest, and property damage, all misdemeanors, and they showed me mercy, which allowed me to keep my state license and my state, my paramedic and my fire license. And in the year or so that this played out, I continued to walk out what God was putting in front of me with complete obedience. And just to, again, why I couldn't talk about this on the first podcast, and why I really was stepping out in faith, man, doing this, because if my lawyer knew I was recording and talking to he told me, no, he's like, don't talk to anybody about anything. Yeah. And here I am. But, so, I mean, faithful or dumb, I don't know. But
let's circle back to something real quick.
Sure.
I want to circle back to Amanda.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there, while you're dealing with all of the aftermath of Susan's hospital stay and the stroke and all these different things, you come across a video.
Yeah. So I'm laying in bed one night with my wife.
Yeah.
I'm kind of just, it's the end of the day. I'm just laying there scrolling through social media, and I come across on Facebook a video of Amanda Adams, and she's prepared. She's training for a half marathon.
Who is she?
Amanda Adams is a firefighter that we work with. She passed away last year, August 16th of 2024. And at this time, like I said, I'm laying there with my wife, and I'm scrolling through social media, and there she is training for a half marathon. And I'm like, didn't she just get diagnosed with terminal cancer? And, I'm trying to figure this out, because she looks like she's smiling from ear to ear, but I know I didn't hear wrong, because she's got her short hair. And she's just praising Jesus. She's just praising God, man. And she's just doing a little monologue selfie while she's jogging, and I can't express how powerful that moment was to me. And there's not enough time. It's definitely something I've wanted to talk about, just her faith alone.
Right.
How through all that, she praised God, she praised Jesus right up to the end, and you never would have known she had cancer, man, if she didn't have to cut her hair. And I was like, if she can maintain a fervor for life and be out still just trying to conquer goals, man, like crushing them right up to the end, I'm like, we can get through this.
Yeah.
We can do this. And it gave me a hope, man.
Yeah.
And I put the phone down, and I went and grabbed my Bible, and I started reading to my wife, and I started reading the book of Job. I don't know why I picked that.
That's a tough one. Yeah.
I don't know why I picked that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started reading, and I would start bouncing around through the Bible. So mind you, this is before rehab.
Yeah.
I had the Max Lucado Bible, some devotionals in it, and I would read it to her. And this really, looking back on it now, it's really obvious to see, like I said, I had that battle going on where I would go back and forth. And when I was reading the Bible and I was praying with her, I had hope. She was going to recover. We're going to be fine. We're going to make the best of this. There's going to be a new normal, but we're going to be good. Like life's going to be good. And then I would fall out of that, and I'd start drinking, and it was no hope. It was despair. It was really, this is our life now. Like, it just really clear how much things changed, man. And because I didn't, again, just a seeker at that point, not really a believer or whatever you want to call me. Like, I'm not surrendered.
Yeah.
I didn't have the habits. I didn't have the spiritual habits. I didn't wake up in the morning and pray.
Sure.
I didn't have a relationship with Jesus at that point. So yeah, there was a back and forth battle.
It's crazy how you can want it, right? You can see the contrasts of when things are good and when things are bad, and kind of bounce back and forth between these light and dark.
Yeah, it's really clear.
And you can kind of see that, but and I think many Christians go through their life with that balancing act, And again, our prayer for them is whatever it takes you to bring you to full surrender, whatever it takes to bring you to your knees to the point to where you're ready to fully surrender and start becoming a new creation. And it's interesting to see through your story how you've had these little glimpses, you have these moments, you have not only the seed that was planted with your mom way back in the day, then you have these, people in your life along the way that kind of point you to that. And then you have your own revelations throughout and your own moments of like something inside of you just kept telling you, this ain't right. Something's going on, and God was trying to get your attention, and he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Praise to him for that. Right.
Yeah. Amen. And it is also obvious now that I understand the spiritual battle. Mm-hmm. And this is one thing I think you and I have talked about, Greg Shore and I have talked about, that the modern church shies away from talking about the spiritual battle. Mm-hmm. Mine doesn't. Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell doesn't. A couple of them don't. Joby Martin, I don't think does.
Right.
And I think this because they think it's going to weird people out, or talking about demons and stuff. But they're real, man.
Yeah.
And this is the way that I see it now when I go back and I look at that part of my life. When I made that decision that I wanted to leave that life behind, it's like, imagine you're a soldier, right? And you're fighting for this team. I'm team agnostic. I'm team atheist. I'm in that kingdom. I'm fighting. I'm a warrior on the front lines for that. And now you start looking around and you're like, these guys aren't all that fun to be around, really. They're all kind of fighting. They're picking each other apart. Like I don't know. It does kind of look a little brighter over there. So you start wandering in to what's enemy territory, and you start realizing maybe I'm fighting for the wrong team.
Yeah.
So how do you make that switch? How do you go to fight for the other side when you're like, I don't know this territory.
Yeah.
I know I should be over here. I know this is the right team, but are they going to trust me? Am I one of them? Are they going to think I'm a spy? So you're in enemy territory. You're unfamiliar with the landscape, and it's like, all right, well, nightfall's coming. I better go back to safe harbor, back on the dark side.
Yeah.
Now, guess what? They see you as a traitor.
Yeah.
You're not welcome here anymore. And that safe harbor for me was alcohol.
Yeah.
So when things started getting tough and I was seeking the Lord and I tried to go back to alcohol, it didn't give me relief. It didn't give me that comfort I was looking for. It gave me anxiety.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to admit it because I didn't understand this. I was like, well, I just need to drink more.
Right.
Like, this is the dumb stuff I would tell myself.
Yeah.
Literally, one beer would make me more anxious. The lights would get brighter. I would get uncomfortable. And this is, long before Susan had a stroke and all that. Like, I would be out at a restaurant after Pulse. I remember going to a restaurant and it's like the lights, it's like there's a spotlight on me. And I'm like, this is a dimly lit bar, and I didn't get that. And it's because I wasn't welcome in enemy territory anymore.
Right.
So that's really the way it happens. And just like going into the church, like I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be accepted here. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward.
Well, that's the importance of what you said. You're part of the security team and just coming back there and talking to a person. Isn't that really what we're doing for each other and in our groups, is being that welcoming hand to go, no, you are welcome here. Let me walk alongside of you.
Yeah.
It's called discipleship or mentorship or things like that. But really all it simply is just walking alongside someone, and answering some questions, not having all the questions figured out yourself, but just being willing to take a look and walk next to somebody.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that back to her. That is a huge piece of my story. And I think we just got to talking, and
I
think we're about ready to land this plane. I didn't share the dream about the Bible study. Should I get into all that? We've been talking for a while.
We didn't go through that.
No.
It's on you, buddy.
I appreciate you being here, man. This is going to be a huge weight off my chest, man.
I know I've been pushing you on it.
God's been pushing on me on it too, man.
Yeah, it's time.
I wanted to do it.
Yeah.
So going back to where I'm at in my story, I got out of rehab. I gave it all up to God, but I'm still unsure of how the legal situation is going to play out. I'm ready to accept the consequences of my actions and serve the Lord wherever that. Like, truly, I was like, God, if you want me to go preach to the guy in a jail cell next to me, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, I prayed constantly that He didn't make me do that.
Yeah.
But I was ready to do it.
Yeah.
Because when you have that kind of experience, and this is one of the things that's hard as an apologist or in apologetics or evangelism is like, I want everyone to have that experience.
Yeah. So you want them to have the experience without the trials. So you want to grab them by the shirt collar and just be like, just listen to me, like your mom wanted you to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. She tried that many times over those lost years.
I mean, and you know, my dad tells me, you know, the older you get, the smarter I'll look. Right. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
You know?
You're not, and I will also say, if I can convince anybody before going too far, you know,
Yeah.
but blessed are those who believe without seeing, man.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I say. Like, I consider it a blessing because of the path that I was on, but how much more blessed would it have been if I had just made the right decisions all the way down the line, which is like,
yeah, there's actually, you know, I think some people who have been lifelong believers and lifelong Christians somehow feel like their testimony is less impactful because they didn't go to jail, or they didn't, you know, hear a voice tell them to pick up a gun, you know.
Yeah.
And I experience that a lot with a lot of my friends and family because they have been lifelong believers. But I think there is also the rock steady testimony that is so important, you know. So
yeah, I think that's huge, and that's why I love to have you on here, and I love to have Jose, because there's certain people that I can reach, but there's a lot that I can't. There's some people who might not get the decisions that I made and might not, you know,
right.
Understand that, you know, addiction, alcohol, or that kind of thing. So after that, completely committed, man. I'm building my prayer life. You know, my church is doing a year of prayer at the time, so I'm learning how to pray and I'm learning how to read the Bible, and I'm just like thirsty for everything I can find about God. And Susan and I got baptized on January 7th of 2024, and that's my spiritual birthday. I'm about a year and a half old. Not even. What are we in? We're still in April. You know, I continue to feel God speaking to me and guiding me. You know, I think like anybody in life, there's ups and downs, and through those downs, I forget who I was talking with about this the other day, but in those moments where you don't feel God, that's when like this is a relationship, you know. So when I don't feel God talking to me, it's time for me to do more talking and have that faith in those moments and continue to pursue Him. And how do we hear God speak to us? Through His Word. So reading the Bible.
Yeah, he doesn't move, right? It's us that moves away, you know.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and so I'm wanting to learn everything I can about God. And I remember having shortly after I got out of rehab, I went back to work, and I'm feeling, in many ways, this like call to kind of go to school and study God. And I'm like, maybe I'll find like an online course, like a YouTube university kind of thing. And I'm gonna, because I realized at this point I need some help guiding, like figuring out the Bible. And then one night I had a dream where I had my Bible study group. It was the one you had been a part of. It's part of how this thing started. We were doing a Zoom Bible study group, and we were going through the book of James. And in my dream, I'm standing on the beach reading the book of James, and I'm holding the Bible up to my face, right? And I can hear, so I'm like just focused on the word, man. Like, but I can see in my peripheral, I can see a circle of people standing around me. And I gotta actually open the book of James. I don't know why. I can feel the sand in my toes, and I can hear the waves crashing. And as we're reading, the waves are getting louder, and now I can feel them going up from my toes to my knees. And we're just reading, just staying focused on God's word. And the waves come crashing up to my waist. And now they're crashing up to the back of the book. And I'm going like this with the Bible, but I'm just keeping my eyes on it, man. And I can feel my feet lifting off the floor of the ocean. And I'm kind of kicking off as the waves come. And I'm kicking off. And then all of a sudden a wave comes and overtakes my whole head. Everything goes under, and I get this split second of like panic about breathing, and I hear a voice say, "Just breathe." And I took the biggest, most satisfying breath I've ever taken in my life, and I look up to the surface of the water, and there's this shimmering light just shines down on me. And then I woke up, and I got a few different interpretations of that dream.
Hmm.
I think what I took away from that right away is like, God's like, you need to go all in,
Mhm.
go all in. And I was talking with Greg, and he was telling me that a lot of times the Holy Spirit's represented by water and in dreams and stuff. And so I feel like, all right, I got to go all in. Let me look more into the school thing. And I had a few different things. I actually shared this story once on the podcast with Greg in episode 5, where I'm like, basically how I got led exactly to go to Liberty University.
Right.
And this is a time, dude, like I said, like I'm just out of rehab. I don't know if I'm going to keep my job.
Yeah.
And I'm like, God, you want me to go to school? You want me to go to Liberty University?
Yeah.
It ain't cheap.
Yeah.
And it's just leading me through all this, like the trust and everything. And I'm like, all right. So now at this point, I got a good, strong prayer life. I'm praying every morning. I'm going down to the beach and I'm praying. I'm like, all right, God, I know you want me to study your word. As soon as all this stuff's cleared up, as soon as everything's settled, I'm gonna look into going to school and all that. And then, dude, the words just come across my vision in my mind, my mind's eye.
Yeah.
Seek first the kingdom of God. Like clear as day, dude. And I had not read the book of Matthew at that point.
All right.
So I didn't know that's
Wow.
Matthew 6:33.
Wow.
He was like, seek first and everything else will come. Everything
Yeah.
else will fall in line.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, but how am I going to pay for it? And then he led me through that, and I won't even get into that, but he's done that a couple times.
Right. Wow.
So, man. So yeah, that led me to go to school. I'm studying theology. So I think we're at a place where we can kind of wrap this up, man. I would love to keep talking about all the blessings that have been happening in my life.
It's a whole nother episode.
Yeah, man. And they're gonna keep coming, but I feel good that I finally got to share this with the world. I hope that it touches some other people. And if you struggle with any of this stuff we talked about, you can reach us on Faith in the Firehouse, the Instagram. I'm the one that runs that page. Hit the comment section or whatever. That I feel like is my mission is to reach the one lost sheep out of the 99, because I believe in redemption. I believe in rehabilitation. I believe in second chances. If I can do it, you can do it,
Amen.
And, ever since then I've been, if there's one piece of advice from the whole Bible that really was my staple for the last, through all this process, it was Proverbs 3:5-6, lean not on your own understanding, in all your ways submit yourself to the Lord. My wife got me this right after that. She's like, hey, knucklehead, stop doing things your way.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I got showed, just to finish up, I got showed mercy by the state. It took a little while for that stuff to play out. The department showed me mercy. I was able to keep my job. I served a pretty, hefty suspension, but I earned that, and I will gladly take it. It's given me a complete renewed purpose in the fire service.
Yeah.
I go to shift every day wanting to glorify God, wanting to show those people who did have mercy on me that they made the right call.
Yeah.
And to show other people that they can too.
Yeah.
We talked about Huggy a couple of times on here. I love that man, and I know he had some of the same struggles, and people like him. I don't want his death to be in vain. And we've had a few people we've lost over my career with the fire department for a couple different reasons, and suicide, and other struggles, man. And there's help. There's resources, and we're just trying to be a part of that. So I thank you, everyone, for listening. I know this was
dude, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you, man. Not just for having the guts to come on here and to lay it out, but more for the way you've progressed and moved, the way you're living your life now, and bringing your wife along. Susan's doing great. She's also a believer. She's also all in, and look at the impact you're having. It's unbelievable. It really is divine how God is using you and your obedience, right? And and it's being noticed by other people. And I don't say that like, look, you're getting attention. What I'm saying is God is using you through this podcast, through your life lived in the firehouse and in your daily walk. And yeah, I mean, that's really all we can do, right? Is pick up our cross and follow him. And you're doing it, dude.
Thank you, man. Thank you for being here and walking me through this, man.
Of course.
Like I said before, you've been there from that first day, or one of those first shifts I came back to work. And
yeah, again, it kind of goes back to Amanda, right? And how she kind of brought us together without even realizing that's what she was doing, you know? So I was in there I think I was getting new gear or something when she was working at Staff and Line, and she pulled me aside and said, "Hey, you heard about Danny Ellis?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, I heard about Danny." She's like, "Maybe you didn't hear the same thing I heard. Let me tell you what I heard," you know?
Wow.
So it's awesome, dude.
I appreciate it, man. With that, I'll wrap it up, man, and close us with prayer.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for this opportunity to share my testimony. I'm just thankful for the way that you've guided me through all of these trials throughout my life, even when I didn't realize you were there, Lord. And I'm thankful that I recognize it now, and I pray that if there's any part of my story, Lord, that any of our listeners hear, Father, I just pray their ears are open to hear it. And I pray that they don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. They don't have to, they can learn from me. And I just pray, Father, that everything I shared here today would glorify you and edify those listening. And I pray in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Good job, buddy.